Influencer style boxing has blown up over the last 6 years. A one-off event between KSI and Joe Weller changed the course of the whole sport into something that we've never seen before. And now, with characters such as Jake Paul fighting some of mainstream's largest figures in front of sold-out arenas, low-level boxing has been left on the wayside.
World Championship fights are being fought in front of half-full, small venues, with money being directed towards big pay-per-view content creator events. But was this the fault of the organisers, who struggled to get eyes on some of the best talent that they've seen in their respective weight divisions? Does boxing rely on content creators? These are some of the key talking points on this episode of Word on Wayside.
I was on X the other day and there was a post that caught my attention which talked about a World Championship bout in East London, and there were more empty seats than there were people in attendance. This comes at a time where we've got Misfits and other boxing content creator events that are selling out some of the biggest arenas in the world, selling tons of pay-per-views. Why are people prioritising content creator events? Why are people prioritising amateurs who have never boxed before instead of some of the best in the world in their weight categories?
I feel like to a certain extent, influencer boxing has sort of been a gift and a curse on the entire scene, really. And there's always positives and negatives with competition. That's just natural, it comes with it. And influencer boxing is here to stay. We know this, and with the rise of it and with more high-profile fights that's been happening, whether the boxing scene wants to accept it or not, it's going to happen.
It kind of looks like a charade, and it takes the credit from us when this is our sport and we do it so many times throughout the day.
We are joined here by Mosaddek Abu, who interviewed amateur boxers on just what their impact with content creator boxing has on the sport. And so, Mosaddek, take it away.
Yeah, I spoke to Jose Alexandra of Joe's Boxing Gym Promotions in Benwell in Newcastle, currently also a uni student, and he had quite a lot to talk about.
I do believe that influencers did make a great job at bringing more eyes to boxing and making people more entertained, because at the end of the day it kind of looks like a charade, and we take it very serious. We train every day, and it kind of takes the feeling that there's skill behind it. And sometimes we have three trainings a day, 2 trainings a day, and we go and we fight against someone that has the same skill levels or even better than us. It's kind of like a blow in the gut for us when influencers that don't have the same capacities and the same knowledge and the same skill levels that we do, but they bring way more numbers that we're able to do. But it's different when we're amateurs, and even getting to the professional stage, your first years is also different. You do have to have a big name in everything that you do to bring more people into the stages, but it is a little bit bad for how the influencers are able and capable of bringing so much eyes into their events, rather than all those eyes being to the people that actually have the skill and actually worked to get there.
There's Jose there showing a bit of his frustration with content creators and how it affects his side. And he did also say that to him it feels like a bit of a blow in the gut. Overall, Harvey, how frustrated do you reckon it must be for amateur boxers to come through?
I think especially because all the eyes, all the money are going towards, I wouldn't even call them amateurs, the content creators. It's going towards a completely different set of people who haven't been involved in the sport as long, who haven't trained to the lengths that they have, and ultimately have then taken away attention from young, up-and-coming boxers in the sport. So I understand that he's got every right to be frustrated.
Yeah, of course. You're going to feel like you're hard done by, naturally. But I feel like to a certain extent, they should know this as well. It's not going to be handed to them. It's a difficult business to get into. And that sort of goes on to the next point that we discussed with another amateur boxer, this time in Arthur Parkin, where sort of social media is integral to amateurs trying to carve a name for themselves in that industry.
People are starting to clock on now in the amateur fight scene to the importance of social media and a presence on social media, because you'll get more eyes on you, you sell more tickets, and then promoters will give you these better fights, and there will be more opportunities for you. And I think there is a lot to learn from the YouTubers who use their following to get big fights. It can kind of be done the other way around, where you can use your fights to get a big following. It can kind of work both ways.
Arthur Parkin there, sort of touching on boxing being both a gift and a curse to amateur boxers. Now, he was essentially saying that you can use influencer boxers and how they do it as sort of a blueprint, Harvey. I think that's quite an important point, isn't it?
I think the issue with copying the model is they need to put personality first over the boxing. People attach themselves to personalities. It doesn't matter whether they were a gaming YouTuber, a football YouTuber, a fashion and beauty YouTuber. They attach themselves to the personality. I think if boxers want to follow that road, they need to be prepared to put the boxing aside when it comes to the camera and focus mostly on personality. But then again, if you want to promote your ability, where'd you go from there?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess we kind of see it, taking it back to the content creator side with Jake Paul. If we were to treat him as sort of an amateur boxer, people want to see him lose because he is the pantomime villain, isn't he really? Mostly have eyes towards him on not only because he can box, because he's not an amazing fighter. He's good, but he's not amazing by any stretch of imagination. People do watch him because they want to see him lose.
But I think as well, Jake Paul takes big names. You know, he fought Tommy Fury. That was his kind of big first fight against a real boxer. Even though Tommy Fury's kind of gone into the influencer and celebrity side of it all, he was a boxer before anything. And a lot of his fights before were with previous NBA athletes, previous MMA athletes, who all had big names. But when it came to in the ring, just them two, Jake Paul was victorious. And I think, do boxers have to sell their soul a bit and think outside the box when it comes to their fights? Would you take someone who isn't a natural boxer, someone still with a big name, maybe still with a big name in combat sports, and bring them over to your turf and beat them at your own game? It sounds a bit of an easy cop-out.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but I think at the same time, it's sort of a short-term fix for what is overall a long-term problem. And I feel like if you speak to any boxing traditionalist out there, they would say that you get out what you put in. And they'll prefer that over a one-off huge moment to kind of build yourself off of, which kind of goes into what we discussed with another boxer in the scene, Keaton Passon.
You can have amateur boxers, you find them on Instagram, they've got like 10,000+ followers, but it's like you hear nothing about them. You walk past them on the street, they look like a regular guy, 5'8", they're weighing like 60 kilos. Honestly, you think to yourself, I could probably take you in a street fight. They need help on some level from someone with that promotional backing, that financial backing to push their name out and to get the cameras, to get the eyes, that media attention on amateur boxing. Now, of course, you can't just have the promotions, the promoters, the agents doing all the work. You've got like the fighters themselves. If it's a boring fight, if they're a boring fighter, if they have no form of entertainment or personality, you can watch 100 of their fights, you're not going to be fans. Now, when it comes to amateur boxers, they are just amateur boxers, not fighting for like the WBC title of the world, the IBF, UFC championship. I would say like what they're fighting for is a lot smaller. You're not going to get all the attention ever. Like, I don't have the same amount of media or influence as KSI. So if I walk out into the street, if I announce my next fight, I'm probably going to get my mum and dad to come and watch it, and that's about it. Maybe my friends, some people I work with. KSI is going to bring in about 60-odd million people from around the world. That's the difference. The way they've already built themselves, they have a professional level of media and influence already. Like, the name KSI is already a celebrity name. My name, Keaton Passan's, an amateur level name. You have to build it with time. And to build a name like that is going to have to take some form of support and help from other people.
Of course, Keaton's saying there, he mentioned about gyms. I think that sort of begs the next question of just how much is it also on the shoulders of the gyms and the people who run the gyms and your coaches alongside the actual boxer itself?
I think you've just got to promote whatever you can. And I think gyms can promote their athletes in the way that if they've got a fight coming up, post on social media, post the pre-fight warm-ups, post maybe the moments in the fight, post-fight reactions, get people to know the boxer and the personality, similar to how any club would go about their match day in any other sport. just celebrate the whole day, get the most out of the performer and document it. And the gyms can do that, and the box can do that themselves, mostly to do with training and outside the ring. But I think it's got to be a happy marriage between the two if you really want to get everything about one of your athletes out there.
Right, it's less about focus on the actual athlete themselves, and it's more just keeping awareness on them by upping their media content.
Because the more people that have eyes on the gym will get to learn about these individuals. The more eyes that a gym has on them, or the more a gym promotes them, the more their athletes get recognition. And also it can work two ways. The more they see athletes from a gym getting celebrated and more successful, the more the gym benefits, because more people will be wanting to go to that gym. It's a two-way thing, and I don't think gyms have realised that yet.
We can mention gyms as much as we want, but I think to a certain extent promotions are to blame as well for this. They do have a hand inside of this. And on this point, we'll introduce our next voice, Lewis Keane of BKFC, who discusses the evolving role promotions have had to their fighters.
At the pro levels, it's always been about, can you sell tickets, can you draw a crowd? That was fine if you could box. There was a lot to be left to the promoter or to the promotion or other avenues of bringing in influence. Other people had to do the work. Now it's all on the fighter now. The fighter has to be a social media influencer, has to be the guy getting the clicks, has to be the guy getting the attention. It's not just a one-way thing where you sell a few tickets, you can fight. There's guys out there that are fighting who have surpassed all the professionals, not even the likes of Jake Paul. If you look at every sport now, it's starting to become a main thing where everyone who's getting the likes, who's getting the views, who's got the one viral clip, the blue tick, they're starting to push past the people that are having to take 5 fights, 6 fights to get up there. They can jump in on a one fight and get up to the same level, the same attention, the same promotion. And then it comes down to money as well now. Many promotions, it's, again, they just look at you and they go, well, how many people can you bring? How many views can you bring to this? Doesn't matter if you're an ex-TV star. It doesn't matter if you're a YouTuber. Can you bring us views? And the fighting comes secondary.
There's Lewis Keane there. Now, of course, with this being said, Harvey, do you think promotions are necessarily pulling their weight?
I think there's two ways you can look at this. Number one being every sport needs promotion. Every athlete needs promotion. You look at Instagram pages like Rising Ballers, who literally promote academy footballers. There's Next Gen 15 for rugby, which promotes school rugby and other grassroots stuff. I can talk about it for ages. There are always going to be some sort of promotion out there that celebrates young athletes and puts them on a map. But also, you've also got this conflicting argument of promoters are now looking at the instant successes that is content creator boxing. It will pull money no matter what, because you've already got the personalities fighting. People want to see it because it's some of their favourite personalities and influencers. People are going to buy into it. So that's where all the promoters' work's going to go, because they're automatically going to get the money and see a return on it, rather than doing the work for the up-and-coming boxers who don't have that big of a following and looking at it as more of a long-term thing.
Yeah, and I think also there's a way that promotions can market this. Because if they're going to ask the question of, well, what are we going to get out of this? Well, we've seen it in loads of different sports where oftentimes there are promotions or there's tournaments or there's competitions dedicated solely to showing people who otherwise you wouldn't have found, whether it's sort of trials after from top like Premier League academies in football, or even Dana White's Contender Series in the UFC. And I feel like this is quite an important point, because it goes on to, it's kind of a mix of both. It's not only how can boxing itself shine a light on amateur and grassroots boxers, but also how can social media help with this as well. Now, these are similar things that were said by boxing journalist Alex McCarthy when he sat down with Mosaddek.
There is no easy solution to pushing people back to where they need to be, and not everyone can make it, right? That's just the process. I will say, in football, when people get released from academies, there's quite a lot of places out there where they can go and train and have the highest sort of caliber of training and preparation, and that gets them back into other clubs. It would be great if boxing had something like that. NBA's kind of got the G League. That it would be great if fight sports did have that little net, like a bridge between the amateurs and would-be pros. I bet you'd find quite a few gems out there because there's a lot of great fighters who just kind of fall through the cracks. You'd be surprised the amount of people who in different disciplines could be something, but then for whatever reason it doesn't happen. So, again, boxing is probably one of those only sports where it's like you make it or you don't. So I don't think it could hurt for somebody to, have a showcase.
Now, like Alex said, we've got the G League and we've got developmental leagues in America, and I think the only problem that boxing has is that, unlike all those other sports mentioned, it's not a league structure. It's a day-to-day, fight-by-fight basis, and there's nothing really bridging the gap between that. So sort of, what is boxing meant to do then?
The only other similar thing I see is golf, in the way that you sign for a tour, you'll play the season, and then maybe you'll make your PGA Tour card, maybe you'll go off with Liv, the big Saudi money one. Boxing doesn't really have these divisions. You sign, like you said, fight to fight, day to day, and it all ends up in this massive thing of one fight only, one night only, come and see it. The events are predetermined, the events are pre-planned, you don't know when they're going to be, you just wait and find out. And I think that's what gets people the excitement when they do watch boxing, is the big fight announced and the lead up to the day, rather than the regular league structure that pretty much all other sports have. The only issue is, like we've said, you don't have that fallback option. You don't have a way to bounce straight back unless you have that name. When Joshua was beaten by Ruiz Jr., it was easy enough to secure another fight. When Alexander Usyk beat him, he was still able to get big fights in the heavyweight division. But for amateur boxers who don't have that name, who don't have that security, it's so on edge, and you've got to either keep fighting or keep winning to secure your name, and you don't have that fallback option. The only other thing is, like you said, Dana White's Contender Series, where he invests in so many young up-and-coming boxers who didn't make it through the linear way, and it worked out. But he's someone that wants to invest in it. He's someone that feels passionately about it. Not many other people do. Not many other people want to invest their time and money in something that could end up to be a huge failure. Dana White took the plunge because it's actually something he feels passionate about. Are the promoters just taking the money and going? Are they putting all their eggs in the good basket?
I think this is sort of a topic that we could sit here and talk about for a very, very long time. However, in production of this podcast, there's been a bit of a breakthrough, Moz. What has happened?
Yeah, so Sky have announced that they'll be streaming a live amateur tournament on their platforms, the Manchester Box Cup, which is a regular tournament every year, but the first time being televised. A lot of the amateurs through the region of Manchester and across other parts of the UK coming together for this big showcase, which is what they've talked a lot about. It's important because now these amateurs can get the platform they desperately want. At the same time, there is rumours of Olympic boxing potentially being cut from the whole Olympics itself. Sky Sports teaming with a local amateur place in Manchester to do this tournament. It's a great idea.
Yeah, of course. It's sort of scary. It was just as we were going to start talking about where does boxing go from here, what can they do. We mentioned Dana White's Contender Series. Overall, Harvey, what are your thoughts on this?
I think it's good. I think it's what we've discussed about here. I think it's what that boxing needs. I think it's something that adds a bit of a safety net or maybe promotion to the amateur scene, which we're not getting at the moment. And it kind of adds a solution to everything we've talked about so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, by all means, it is a step in the right direction. We're not there yet, but it is a very, very good sign. Now, of course, we have been, myself, Morgan Jameson, have been joined with Mosaddek and Harvey, and from all of us, goodbye.